Welcome back to the long-awaited second season of Amazon's Rings of Power. In many ways, Season 2 is an improvement, but in many others it is an excellent demonstration of how to take something that is already bad and make it worse. In Episode 3, we had a fair few cliffhangers. Adar is nearly ready to do something, Theo has been abducted by someone, but probably the two biggest cliffhangers are that Pharazôn has taken over Numenor, and Sauron has made some dwarven rings. So, strap in for Episode 4, in which neither of those two plot threads are mentioned. We pick up with Elrond and Galadriel after the events of Episode 2. They have been granted permission to travel to Eregion to warn Celebrimbor, and for some reason Elrond has agreed to work with Galadriel despite her wearing an evil magical ring. Elrond says that they need an archer and 2 swordsmen to accompany them. I am unsure why they have decided to take only 5 people in total, but I guess this decision lies with Gil-galad and not Elrond. Galadriel then remembers that she is a disgusting, cocky, sarcastic piece of filth, and she says,
"We shall need an archer, 2 swordsmen. I trust you can recommend a set?"
Trust? Me? Are you certain that's wise, Commander?
Yes, bitch.
Because even though she fucked up, and by fucked up I mean even though she helped Sauron take over Middle-earth, the writers have not allowed her to properly address why she did what she did, which means she has learned absolutely nothing from all of this, which means she is going to continue to play the victim and remind Elrond at every opportunity that actually he is an asshole for not trusting her. Everything that Galadriel has done so far from the end of Season 1 onwards is exactly, to the letter, what she would do if she was Sauron in disguise. Elrond is absolutely right not to trust her, although I think that his accompanying her on this mission should have been contingent upon her not wearing the ring, or at the very least, giving it to someone else in Lindon. Elrond threatens to demote her, and Galadriel then begrudgingly says that yes, she can recommend an archer and 2 swordsmen.
If we take the Axa Bridge, Eregion is just under 150 leagues.
Well. This is the second time that Rings of Power has actually given us a number to work with, and we can use this to try to comprehend the ever-changing world that is Amazon's Middle-earth, a land in which distances are as long as they need to be, and a world in which the various storylines appear to take place on different planes of reality. So, now I can do some calculations. If you didn't want me to be able to concretely say that your story does not line up, then you shouldn't have given me a number to work with.
I've been looking forward to this.
150 leagues is about the same distance as travelling from Land's End in Cornwall to Hadrian's Wall, or for those of you across the pond, travelling from Boston to Baltimore. To do this in real life on a real horse would take about a week at minimum, allowing for rests in between. This speculation involving horses, however, turns out to be relatively worthless, because the company of Elrond inexplicably decides to run to Eregion. Maybe they deliberately chose to travel on foot, fearing that the usual roads would be too dangerous and the horses won't be able to climb mountains or whatever it is that they plan to do. But we don't get any of that. They just don't have horses because they don't. Anyway, this means my estimation for travel time is way the fuck off. Not that this helps the show in the slightest. The average running speed for a man is 10 minutes per mile. Elves would presumably be faster, but they are running in all kinds of different environments and they are carrying weapons. If they ran at a pace of 1 mile every 10 minutes non-stop, it would take them just over 3 days to travel 150 leagues from Lindon to Eregion. And this is where we encounter a problem, and I don't know if this is brought on by a lack of competence or just a general lack of clarity. None of them appear to be carrying food or camp supplies, which would suggest that they do not need either of the above. This, plus the fact that Galadriel planned to swim 4,000 miles in a dress in Season 1, would suggest that the elves running day and night across the continent to get to Eregion is entirely possible. Additionally, we saw at the end of Season 1 that Galadriel carried Halbrand on horseback from the Southlands to Eregion in apparently 6 days, and in this case it is directly stated that they did not stop at any point.
6 days ago, we rode without rest.
Which tells us that these horses are able to do this, even though horses cannot run for nearly a week without stopping. The problem is that if all of this is possible, then it means my earlier estimation of a week for the letter to get from Lindon to Eregion was not even close to accurate, which means the timelines, surprise fucking surprise, do not line up. The average running speed for a horse is about 45 miles an hour, but it can slow to around 20 miles an hour if carrying a rider, or if traveling over long distances, so let's use the lower estimate of 20 miles per hour. If, as has been stated, these horses can essentially ride non-stop, then this means it would take about 22 hours for a rider to travel from Linden to Eregion, which is substantially less than my more reasonable estimate of about a week. Now we can start to draw out how long all of this actually took, starting with Sauron revealing his identity for no reason at the end of Season 1. Celebrimbor forges the rings, which I am going to assume that this takes a couple of days. It could have been longer, which I will address later, but for now, let's just go with 2 days. Given Elrond's actions, we have no reason to assume that he would wait before taking the rings back to Linden, which means he will have arrived in Linden approximately 3 days after Sauron revealed his identity. Gil-galad then sent his messengers to Eregion and would have expected a reply after no more than 3 days, given the urgency of his message. 1 day to get there, 1 day to get back, and 1 day of leeway. This means that by the time Gil-galad sends out Galadriel and Elrond to see what has happened, approximately 6 days will have passed since Sauron revealed himself. We can maybe push this to a full week to be as generous as possible. During this week or so, following his revelation to Galadriel, Sauron travelled from Eregion to Mordor, which we know takes 6 days if riding non-stop. And you can already see that this does not line up whatsoever, but let's keep going. He then gets tortured by Adar for, we have to assume, at least a week or two, because otherwise Adar just kind of gave up on torturing him after a couple of days, which I don't believe he would do.
You can't kill me.
In time, you will beg me to.
But let's lowball it and call it a week. He was then released and he returned to Eregion, which means Sauron turning into Anatar and tricking Celebrimbor happened approximately 3 to 4 weeks after he revealed his identity to Galadriel at the end of the season. Now, regarding the rest of Season 2 so far, given the distance and given the fact that the dwarves do not appear to use horses, which actually makes me wonder how on earth King Durin managed to walk for a day to Eregion, but that's another issue, I would guess that it takes about a day for the dwarves to travel between Khazad-dûm and Eregion. To make this next bit easier to explain, let's say that Sauron arrived at Eregion on Monday morning and was invited inside that evening. On Tuesday, he sends a message to the dwarves, and this message arrives on Tuesday evening. The dwarves set out for Eregion on Wednesday morning, and they arrived sometime later in the evening. On Thursday morning, they hear Celebrimbor's proposal, and they return to Khazad-dûm, arriving later that evening. On Friday, Durin speaks with his father, and I'm going to assume that they didn't immediately leave Khazad-dûm after this conversation, because I think that would be absurd, so I will guess that the king thought about Celebrimbor's proposal on Friday, made up his mind, and they travelled to Eregion on Saturday morning. As Anatar would not want to wait, I am happy to accept that they began crafting the dwarven rings as soon as the dwarves arrived, which means, if it takes a couple of days, as I speculated earlier, that by Monday evening, the rings have been forged. That is the absolute shortest time period that I think it is reasonable for all of this to have happened in, which means that at an absolute minimum, a month has passed from Sauron revealing his identity to the dwarven rings being crafted. And so the amount of time it actually takes to forge the rings ends up being totally irrelevant, because we have to assume it would take a similar amount of time to craft the elven rings as the dwarven rings, and so if we dial up this time frame from 2 days to 2 weeks, this extra time gets added to both timelines, and so there is still a discrepancy of about 4 weeks at an absolute minimum. The only way that these two plot lines can resynchronize is if Elrond and Galadriel are delayed by somewhere around a month in reaching Eregion, and if this happens, I will revisit this timeline. But for now, wacky wonderful time-bending charisma void indeed. Anyway, they find a bridge that was destroyed by lightning, but Galadriel is convinced that it was Sauron who blew it up. I can accept that she may suspect this, but just to be absolutely clear, unless Sauron went out of his way when travelling from Mordor to Eregion so as to blow up the bridge, then this is not possible. Given that this appears to be the only bridge to cross this particular chasm, it might be reasonable for Sauron to want to blow it up so as to slow down any potential inconveniences travelling from Linden, but if he did go hundreds of miles out of his way to blow up this bridge, then this will have delayed his arrival in Eregion, which then makes the aforementioned timeline even more out of sync than it already was.
To circumvent it, we shall either have to turn due north, adding 2 weeks to our journey.
Or
We go south.
Through the hills of Turin Gortad.
The implication here is that Sauron broke the bridge so as to force them to take a more dangerous path, which is kind of like what Saruman did to the Fellowship when they attempted to cross the mountains, except that what Saruman did made sense and was possible because of the information he had at that point in time, whereas Sauron diverting the company of Elrond into the hills of Tiryn Gorthad relies entirely on him preemptively destroying a bridge in case anyone from Lindon tries to stop him, which also requires that there is only one bridge. Galadriel believes that Sauron wants them to go into Tiryn Gorthad because the writers told her— because the ring told her. It's hard to keep track sometimes. Whilst Elrond believes that the enemy will be watching both roads. Galadriel says that if they walk into a trap, then they will never make it to Eregion, period. But, unfortunately, she does not offer any alternative. The options are to go into what is probably a trap, or to increase their travel time by 2 weeks. Elrond then says,
we go south.
he has heard enough, and it is up to him to make these kinds of decisions. I like that Elrond is taking charge, and he is basing his decision-making on the opinions of the other far more experienced soldiers, because Elrond is a politician. He is here to make sure that Galadriel doesn't accidentally ruin everything and then try to hide her cock-up from everyone for a second time, but we have not yet had any indication that Elrond has any combat experience whatsoever. Because Galadriel is Galadriel, she protests.
Commander, I must protest.
But the writers again forget to tell us what Galadriel actually wants them to do instead. She doesn't think it's a good idea to go south, but she hasn't argued in favor of going north. Which means she is saying,
Elrond, listen to me, because I know better than you. We can't go south. The ring told me south is bad.
Okay, so do you want to go north and take an extra 2 weeks to get there?
Hey, don't be looking at me now for all the answers. You're the one that's in charge here. It's up to you. And also, you don't trust me because you're a backstabbing pig fucker, and I'm the commander of the Northern Armies, so I should be in charge.
Galadriel, I'm just asking what you think we should do instead of going south.
I'm the scourge of the orcs, and I'm the warrior of the wastes, and I say south is bad.
all she is doing is complaining without providing any alternative solution, and thankfully, because Elrond magically grew a spine in between seasons, he does not let this fly whatsoever. He tells her to get back in line and shut her trap.
This company will not take counsel from that trinket, nor will you.
Oh my god, is he finally going to ask her to take the fucking ring off? Unfortunately not, because the writers need Galadriel to continue wearing the ring so that they can inject information into her brain so as to allow the plot to happen. Actually, yeah, why is Galadriel here again? Surely Elrond and these 4 randos would be able to get the job done, right?
He knows my mind, and I know his.
Ah, yes. So Galadriel is here because she is convinced that she knows Sauron in a way that no one else does, and that therefore only she can defeat him. Galadriel continues that she is not going to go back to Lindon because she doesn't want any of them to die in her absence, which is a nice piece of character development because she showed absolutely no regard for the lives of others in Season 1. She, of course, doesn't just go around killing people, but if people die as a result of her reckless behavior, then they shouldn't have gotten in the way. A perspective which was cemented at the end of the season when she allowed the rings to be forged, and thereby risked the lives of all of the free peoples of Middle-earth. But now, it seems as though she is willing to endanger herself to protect others, which the writers probably don't consider to be character growth, because Galadriel is the hero who is also the best, and so she was, of course, always like this. But given that they clearly do not understand their version of Galadriel, we can't credit them with this small moment of character growth. But I will nonetheless observe that the character has grown. Elrond kinda has a spine, and confident leader. Galadriel complains. Now we get to find out what happened after the tornado in episode 2. Not Gandalf finds himself in what appears to be a goat farm in the middle of the desert, and he asks this nice man if he has seen his 2 little smelly friends.
Pardon me, I don't suppose you've seen a pair of halflings?
See, you found the goat.
I hate you.
Not Gandalf says that he wasn't looking for a goat, and the man replies,
well, there's what you're searching for, and there's what you find now, isn't there?
Translation, I don't care about your friends, and I am a sarcastic prick. Not Gandalf explains that he has followed the constellation on his map, and it has led him to the hill above this man's farm. And he is evidently hoping that this is what the Harfoots will have also done, assuming that they survived the tornado. Because we need to waste time, this is the Nori and not Gandalf plot after all, the wind takes the map and he chases it. He finds a branch that looks nothing like the branch he saw in his dream, and he tries to take it. And the reason why this happens is because this is no tree. It is a huorn, the semi-sentient trees that we saw in the extended edition of The Two Towers. And not Gandalf gets eaten. Which means that the wind just tricked him into getting eaten by a tree, and I will wait until we come back to not Gandalf to elaborate further. Now, for the moment you have all been waiting for, we get to see what insane bullshit the writers pulled to make Nori and Poppy survive being flung hundreds of feet into the air by a tornado. Turns out they just landed on the ground and they're okay. Moving on. Not only are they alive, but they also landed a few feet from each other, which is, of course, how tornadoes work. Then this fascinating goofball just so happens to be walking past, after having wandered off the set of the straight-to-DVD Sci-Fi Originals B-movie ripoff of The Lord of the Rings that exists so that your grandparents will be tricked into buying it instead of buying the real deal. Nori and Poppy believe him to be a Harfoot, presumably because he looks like he can't spell hygiene, and he sounds like a caricature of an Irish traveller.
Who are you exactly?
I'm nobody.
Remember what I said about the writers wasting our fucking time with meaningless bullshit whenever they cut away to the Nori plot? Well, strap in and put your bicycle helmets on because we are about to overdose on slow, painfully unfunny, and utterly meaningless drivel. Poppy says that he can't be nobody, and then he says that everyone calls him nobody, and then Poppy says that if everybody calls him nobody, then doesn't anybody call him somebody?
My mum calls me Merry Mac.
Then why didn't you say that? I think the writers have actually decided to add a cognitively deficient character into Middle-earth so as to pad the runtime. He clearly knows what a name is, but he doesn't appear to understand that when somebody says, "Who are you?" they are asking for your name. And this is not an invitation to play retarded word games that admittedly might sound clever to someone with brain damage. He doesn't need to behave like this in order to accomplish what he accomplishes in the story, and I can think of no other reason why the writers would make him act in this manner. Nori asks where he got his water from, and Simple Jack, the handy-capable Harfoot, says,
"Keep your voice down."
Despite the fact that he was just casually having a lengthy discussion prompted by his pretense that he didn't understand the concept of a name. After Poppy suspects that he stole the water from Skeletor's well, Simple Jack decides to run away in fear, and he accidentally tells them that there is a village. And then Poppy says that he will take them to the village, otherwise she will turn him in to Skeletor for stealing Skeletor's water from the well. This is an idle threat, as Poppy knows that Skeletor is trying to kill them, but I guess this shows that Poppy will absolutely threaten death or worse upon a simpleton if he doesn't do what she says. In summary, the writers had Nori and Poppy inexplicably survive and land right next to a character who can lead them to safety, whilst also being able to fill a few minutes with painfully juvenile banter, which is an added bonus if your goal is to fill an hour of TV, which, come to think of it, is exactly what happened to Isildur in episode 3. Simple Jack then tells them that they are going to meet their Dwell leader, known as the Gund, and he informs them that there are 4 rules they need to follow. This is what the rules are, and I'm not making any kind of grammatical joke here, this is quite literally what he says, because this character is extremely clever and extremely funny. 1. Don't look the Gund in the eye. B. Always stand 3 steps back. 4. Don't ever call her the Gund.
Was that 3 rules or 4? I wasn't really paying attention.
It's funny, because it doesn't make any sense. Only the writers forgot to actually insert something funny into this joke. And, of course, the reason this dialogue exists is because they are going to break these rules later, and everyone will laugh because they did the thing that they were told not to do, which is, of course, inherently funny in and of itself. They are led to the home of the Stoors, who are exactly the same as Harfoots, except that they live in holes. The Stoors village itself, however, is not at all similar to the constantly migrating Harfoot village, as this is a fully established settlement, with permanent structures including homes, flower beds, stairs, and irrigation systems. This means that the Stoors are able to live in the desert and somehow have reliable access to water, and this access cannot be purely by means of walking over to Skeletor's well every day and pinching his, because if this is indeed how the Stoors acquire their water, then it makes the idea that the village has not been nuked from orbit even more absurd than it already is. However this village functions, it must function without requiring that the inhabitants go out into the desert with any degree of frequency, unless we are expected to believe that Rasputin knows about it. More on that later. Having just been introduced to one laughably simple character, we are then introduced to another, Gundabale, aka the Gund. This character is a bad-tempered, rude, sarcastic, and condescending hag.
Nobody's that stupid. Are you talking back sass to me? Go on, plead your case. He said one good reason. He's a great big grand elf.
I had my criticisms of Sadok, primarily that he was a being of pure evil, but his personality was at least somewhat endearing whenever he wasn't cackling maniacally about his friends getting eaten by crocodiles. Sadok seemed to have an amount of wisdom and experience, and I could believe that such a character may end up as the leader of the Harfoots. Gundabale, on the other hand, has the personality of an eternally angry 50-year-old spinster who works a student job because no one can fucking stand her, and she thinks the world owes her something. The only reason why I can accept that this woman is in charge of the Stoors is because the only Stoor who has been characterized so far is Simple Jack. The others are merely extras who were dragged off the street, kicking and screaming by Papa Bezos so that he could tick certain boxes. Anyway, Gundabale tells Simple Jack off for bringing the Harfoots here because half the devils in the desert are searching for them, which indicates that the location of this village is somehow hidden, despite not being hidden in the slightest, and so how neither Skeletor nor Rasputin knows about it, I have no idea. Now, because Simple Jack brings a tear to Poppy's thighs, she tells Gundabale to be nice to him, and what are we doing? What's going on?
Are you talking back sass to me?
Oh, that was the fourth rule.
This is narrative content that might enthrall a 5-year-old. This is more juvenile than anything in the Hobbit trilogy, a series of films that I criticized repeatedly for having childish humor and for wasting my time. Nori and Poppy accidentally ending up in a little sand village filled with sand Harfoots and arguing about whether or not one of them genuinely has brain damage is the biggest waste of time so far in Rings of Power. All we're missing is a comically contrived misunderstanding brought about due to the characters being unable to articulate themselves. Speaking of, Gundabale asks Nori to convince her to let her stay, and Nori explains that she wants to help her friend who is a wizard. But oh no, the only wizard they know of is Rasputin, who is evil, so they get tied up, which allows us to fill even more time with thoroughly contrived storytelling, because Nori and Poppy were written by the writers of Rings of Power, and so they are not allowed to explain themselves in any manner that would clear all of this up in a few seconds. No, 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 we need them to be in trouble in episode 4, so that they can be rescued in episode 5. Okay, Nori. I mean, she's clumsy because she said the wrong thing and then she got tied up. Poppy, attracted to simpletons, but also threatens to kill the mentally disabled. And we got Simple Jack is, of course, simple. And we have Gundabale is angry. Meanwhile, Skeletor has returned to Rasputin, having of course survived the tornado to end all tornadoes, and he informs Rasputin that not Gandalf's powers are too great. I am entirely unsure why anyone expected any differently because, as Rasputin pointed out in episode 2, his best and brightest from a league of morons were unable to defeat not Gandalf, which would imply that a group of edgelords with leprosy would not fare any better. If the characters in Amazon's Middle-earth were written like people instead of like dopamine dispensers, Feminem could have explained what actually happened at the end of Season 1.
We easily overpowered him, but then the Harfoots bonked me with a rock, stole my staff, gave it to not Gandalf, at which point he did a Super Saiyan and vaporized us with the power of good.
Feminem, Rasputin, and Skeletor should all have the knowledge that without a staff, not Gandalf is a pensioner with amnesia. But with a staff, he is Death, the Destroyer of Worlds. In other words, don't fucking charge at him on your horse if he is holding a large stick in a threatening manner. But, alas, that is not what happened because the writers are experts at contriving drama in a TV show. Rule number 3, of course, being that characters shall be damn or inconsistent so as to facilitate drama. Skeletor informs Rasputin that not Gandalf is heading north towards the Hermit, but that he is unsure where the Harfoots are, and the conclusion of this dump of exposition is that Skeletor is tasked with combing the desert to find the halflings, even though he really should believe them to be dead, whilst Rasputin will deal with the Istar himself. Cut back to not Gandalf, who has been eaten by a tree. The following scene does not clarify why the wind stole his map and baited him in this manner, and given that not Gandalf getting eaten by the tree is undone momentarily, this means the only reason why this happened was to serve as a cheap cliffhanger, and to allow this new character to say things that he says in the book. The Hermit then tells the tree off in a very OU tone of voice.
Let him out again. You should not be working. Eat earth. Dig deep.
This means he knew that not Gandalf had been eaten by the Huorn, that this has happened before, and that he is able to communicate with the Huorns. As for why there is a single Huorn in the middle of the fucking desert, I have no idea. Again, my guess is that its presence will allow the writers to shoehorn in some dialogue that was spoken by Treebeard in the extended edition of The Two Towers, but was originally spoken by someone very different in the books. Someone by the name of Tom Bombadil. Rather confusingly, Rings of Power's version of Tom Bombadil is depicted as a condescending asshole, which isn't necessarily a problem, but it is very much an interesting creative decision. After rescuing him from the tree, Tom Bombadil gives Not Gandalf a bath and cleans his clothes, and I will remind you that all the while, Not Gandalf has every reason to believe that Nori and Poppy are dead because they were flung into the air by a tornado. And even if they survived the fall, as we learned in episode 2, deserts do not have water and are very hot. And they are being hunted by Skeletor, which is, 4 different reasons why they could very easily be dead by now? And Not Gandalf only mentions his half-foot friends once in this entire scene.
I was hoping to find my friends.
As we will see, this scene goes on to set up Not Gandalf's mission for presumably the rest of the series, and so it is quite important. But the fact that he appears to totally forget about Nori and Poppy is definitely rather jarring, and it comes across as though the writers had Not Gandalf ignore this because they had important exposition to deliver. They could have instead had Tom Bombadil start giving his vague and flowery prophecy, and have Not Gandalf keep interrupting him like, bro, I get it, I need to save the world, but first, I really kinda need to find my friends. Anyway, because we need to waste more time, Not Gandalf asks if he heard a woman singing, because he did hear a woman singing, because we just heard a woman singing, and the response is...
Is somebody out there with you?
I thought I heard a woman singing.
Woman? What woman?
Is no one else here with you?
You're here? That is, I think you are you?
Yes.
Don't waste my motherfucking time!
Tom Bombadil asks Not Gandalf why he is following the stars.
I was hoping to find my friends.
No, you were following the stars because you believed for some reason that you needed to go to Rune. This constellation was described in Season 1 by the Androgenites as the Hermit's Hat, and given that they referred to Tom Bombadil as the Hermit in the previous scene, this would suggest that the constellation has led Not Gandalf directly to Tom Bombadil, and that therefore the Androgenites wanted him to go to Tom Bombadil. To be clear, he appeared to have the Hermit's Hat in his brain from the very start, as the scene with the Fireflies showed us that he knew that he needed to go there for some reason. The Androgenites then showed up, believing him to be Sauron. They seemed to be aware that he knew about the Hermit's Hat, and that he had a veil over his mind, despite the fact that he is not Sauron. And the fact that the Hermit's Hat constellation is directly above Tom Bombadil, aka the Hermit, would indicate that the Androgenites wanted to take Sauron to see Tom Bombadil.
What is happening?
This is utter fucking nonsense, because I know that Tom Bombadil is not evil, but for the moment, the audience should be thinking, oh snap, this is the place the Androgenites wanted to take Sauron. Although it would not surprise me if the writers forgot that this is something they wrote in Season 1. Through a whole bunch of irritating pseudo-spiritual and vague dialogue, we learn that Tom Bombadil is the oldest entity in Middle-earth, and that he is capable of magic. Not Gandalf asks Tom Bombadil to teach him magic. He gives a vague non-answer because of fucking course he does. And Not Gandalf instead asks if he can teach him how to wield a staff, which one would think is the same as teaching him to use magic, given how magic works in this setting. But either way, because Tom Bombadil has been asked a very slightly different question, he responds that, much like a name, if Not Gandalf is worthy of a staff, then it is his already.
You showed today that you're not yet. Whether you can become so, we shall soon discover.
So, yes, you meant to say yes then, right? Yes, I will teach you. Tom Bombadil then explains that Not Gandalf is not the first Istar who has come to him. There was another. We learn that once Rasputin wanted to control magic, but now he controls all of Rune and is therefore evil. Tom Bombadil believes that Rasputin seeks to control everything, kinda, but that he needs help from an ally even more powerful than himself.
Sauron.
The implications of this are rather hilarious, and I have no idea if the writers considered this. We are, I assume, meant to infer that the original evil plan was that, after Morgoth's defeat, Rasputin wanted to team up with Sauron to take over Middle-earth, but Sauron got Julius Caesared and turned into spaghetti for a good short while, thus delaying Rasputin's evil plan. When Rasputin saw the meteor crash in the lands far to the west, he was like, oh, okay, that's gotta be my boy Sauron. Androgenites, assemble! And he sent out his 3 most intelligent and most capable minions to the crash site to scoop up Sauron and bring him to Tom Bombadil, so that Tom Bombadil could accidentally train Sauron to use the Force, at which point Rasputin would show up and be like, aha, you fool! You have played directly into my hands, you bumbaloid! Now the reign of Rasputin and his bestest buddy Sauron has begun! Tom Bombadil is an asshole and is insanely powerful. And not Gandalf stops worrying about Nori whenever she is off screen and is not sure about saving the world. Cut back to the company of Elrond, who are now in a spooky forest. This spooky forest, Tiryn Gorthad, is also known as the Barrow-Downs, and it is where ancient men laid their kings to rest. Red Shirt says that he feels no rest here, and he appears to be understandably freaked out, given that this forest is, of course, spooky. Although why he waited until they were in the middle of the forest before saying anything, I do not know. Elrond then finds the corpse of the messenger's horse that Gil-galad sent out to warn Celebrimbor back in episode 1. Which means I must concede that I was wrong in my assertion that the writers would just have the messengers go missing and never address it again. What could possibly have given me that idea? Galadriel says that Gil-galad sent a dispatch to Eregion, which is what we saw, but she later implied in episode 2 that he had sent multiple.
Our letters to Celebrimbor have all gone unanswered.
Given the nature of the message, it would of course have made sense for Gil-galad to send out multiple via different riders on different roads for redundancy purposes, and had he done this, given the way the timelines line up, or to be more specific, given the way the timelines absolutely do not line up, the message informing Celebrimbor that Halbrand is Sauron would have arrived in Eregion around about the same time that Sauron arrived in Mordor after the end of Season 1. However, the fact that this did not happen, as well as the fact that Galadriel says in this very scene that Gil-galad sent a dispatch to Eregion, leads me to conclude that Gil-galad, in his infinite wisdom, did indeed send multiple letters. He just forgot to send them via multiple riders. Anywho, Red Shirt gets grabbed and killed by an evil spookster, and the others find themselves surrounded, and I'm sorry, but what the fuck is with this line delivery?
What are they?
What, are you retarded?
One of her fellow soldiers has just been dragged to his death. She has just been surrounded by undead wraiths, and her response is to ask, what are they? In the same manner in which one might inquire as to what breed a particular cat is. Galadriel reveals that she knows what these things are, Barrow-wights, and they prepare for battle. Our heroes include Galadriel, the bestest soldier in the history of soldiers, who is also powered up by an evil magical ring. We have Map Guy, who is presumably not notably skilled at fighting. We have What Are They, who was specifically chosen because she is shit hot at archery. We have Elrond, who is here to make sure Galadriel doesn't destroy Middle-earth. His talents include negotiating, people managing, and writing poems. And we have overconfident McDaggerman, who was specifically chosen because he is exceptionally talented at stabbing things. What could possibly go wrong? Elrond orders the attack, which is a bit weird because yes, he is the commander of this particular company, but he also presumably has the least military experience other than maybe Map Guy. Galadriel, McDaggerman, and What Are They each attack one Barrow-wight, but they regenerate, which clearly shows to the audience that the Barrow-wights are impervious to their weapons. But because the writers for Rings of Power do not trust that their audience is actually watching the show, let's be honest, the contents of Insert Social Media app here are far more engaging than anything in Rings of Power. And so they have Map Guy say,
they're impervious to our weapons.
What a twist!
Also, surely Galadriel would already know this if she knows what they are. Which makes me wonder how no one else knows what these things are. As although this spooky forest only became spooky very recently, Barrow-wights are evidently not a new phenomena. It is implied that, yes, until very recently this was just a normal forest of the non-spooky variety, because the other elves were all totally cool with coming this way, except Galadriel, because the writers made her have a vision. But that said, Galadriel described the evil in the hills of Tiryn Gorthad as ancient, so I have no idea when exactly this happened, because it seems the writers have no idea when this happened. It appears that none of them know how to fight a Barrow-wight, but Galadriel specifically knows what a Barrow-wight is, which leads me to conclude that the reason she says Barrow-wight is because it's a thing from the book. I've read the book. I like it when I see the thing from the book. Elrond then sheaths his sword and orders that they follow him, and he asks Map Guy to help him open a thingy. The Barrow-wights remember that they can use their chains, and oh no, Galadriel gets chained. What a shame. I guess the writers forgot that elves have fantastic hearing, and so she would absolutely have heard this coming, although her being torn apart by animated corpses after claiming to know what she is fighting against and being mistaken in how to defeat them would be rather fitting, because so far she has actually been rewarded for everything she did in Season 1. This next bit is edited very strangely, and my guess is that the writers and/or editors deliberately wanted to hide information from the audience so as to misdirect us, and give us a surprise moment a few seconds later. McDaggerman sees that Galadriel is in trouble, and he runs to help her. Then we cut to Elrond and Map Guy, who are opening the thingy, and then we see that someone is running to help Galadriel. Naturally, we would believe that this is McDaggerman because this is how object permanence works, and if we look closely, we can see that this mystery individual is carrying 2 daggers, and so this is overconfident McDaggerman. But, actually no, it wasn't. It was Elrond.
What a twist!
Which means that the show has lied to the audience for a cheap payoff. And this payoff could have been achieved without misdirecting the audience. And so it very much feels as though they decided to misdirect us because they could, or alternatively this scene was chopped to hell and back and they kind of threw it together based on the footage they captured on the day. $1 billion dues, everyone. Elrond gives Galadriel a spear, and the spear effectively kills the wights unlike their other weapons. This means Elrond went to the crypt knowing that there would be a magical spear inside that could defeat them. As he says, according to lore, only the blades with which they were buried will return such creatures to rest. This is something, and something is better than nothing, but it is also not enough. Elrond knowing about this is fine, because unlike the others, he is not a soldier, and so he probably read this in a book somewhere. As for why the others didn't know, I have no idea. Particularly given that we are expected to believe that overconfident McDaggerman, Red Shirt, and What Are They are all the best of the best, as they were specifically chosen by Galadriel to accompany them. We also don't know why the wights were unaware of this fact, how Elrond knew where these weapons were buried, and if he had been unable to open the crypt, we have to assume that they all would have been killed. Map Guy says that these men were buried 1,000 years ago, and McDaggerman says that something must have awoken them.
No. Someone.
This answers the question as to how the messenger did not arrive in Eregion. But this answer does nothing to change the fact that Sauron was exceptionally lucky. What we are expected to believe is that there are 3 ways to get from Eregion to Lindon. The fastest way is via the bridge. The next fastest way is via the spooky forest, which until recently was not spooky. And the excruciatingly slow way is to go north. First of all, I don't believe that there are only 3 ways to cross the continent of Middle-earth. We are then seemingly expected to believe that Sauron's return has caused evil to awaken, which is nice and vague, but that isn't necessarily a problem. We saw in Episode 2 the evil tendrils of evil spreading from Mount Doom, which may imply that the evil is spreading from Mordor itself rather than Sauron specifically. But either way, this tells us that Sauron did not know about a letter, and he did not tell anyone to intercept it. His evilness caused the forest to become spooky, and caused the Barrow-wights to reanimate, and Sauron figured that if he destroys the bridge, anyone who wants to travel from Lindon to Eregion will have to go through the recently spookified forest, and this will reliably lead to their death. This is incredibly important, because as far as Sauron can be aware, if Celebrimbor is informed of his identity prior to his arrival, his plan fails. Which, actually, come to think of it, Sauron had no way of knowing that Galadriel didn't immediately tell Celebrimbor that he is Sauron back in Season 1. Which means when Sauron showed up in Eregion, he was taking a massive gamble. As Celebrimbor could very easily have been like, holy fuck, it's Sauron, quick, slap him with some moon runes. Sauron also seems to be working under the impression that someone traveling from Lindon to Eregion is bad news, when he would have no reason to assume this, because he can't have predicted that Galadriel and or Elrond would go to Lindon, and that Gil-galad would then send people back to Eregion to warn Celebrimbor. And even if he did somehow predict this, Sauron does not account for an army, even a small company of, say, 50 people, marching to Eregion. He does not account for the Barrow-wights being easily dispatched, provided you read some books and know how to kill them. He does not account for someone just kind of taking a wide berth around the tombs of the ancient kings. In summary, Sauron did not specifically place his agents on the path to intercept or kill anyone who comes that way. He instead diverted any potential messengers onto a path that is vaguely dangerous, and he was just like, the Barrow-wights will take care of them, probably. Okay, I was gonna write has insane plans that make no sense, but we've already got that, so consistency, well done. We've got Galadriel is overconfident. Elrond is smart. Red shirt, red dead. What are they? Doesn't know what they are. And overconfident. McDaggerman is overconfident. Sometimes turns into Elrond. Cut to Pelargir, and Isildur has assembled a team of peasants to search for the village idiot, which means he went back to Pelargir after hearing Theo's screams and was like, yeah, so we just tried to go and get my horse and Theo's probably dead. And the rest of them were like, oh god, not Theo, he's so memorable. Also, his mum just died off screen. We can't let him die too. Whatever will we do if we need someone to emote aggressively in our general direction? They reach the Wild Men camp, which is now empty and is distinctly lacking in corpses. Which means whatever attacked them in episode 3 left no trace. Arondir also finds it strange that they left their weapons.
To a wild man, an axe head is worth more than gold.
This seems to suggest that the Wild Men are a known faction in Middle-earth, which is not at all what we have been shown so far. These so-called Wild Men are disparate groups of Southlanders who were either released or escaped from Adar's enslavement, and Arondir is treating this as though this is the forest where the Wild Men live, and, as everyone knows, the Wild Men value their weapons more than gold. It is possible that these hills were crawling with wild men long before the events of Season 1, but if this is the case, firstly, you need to tell me that, and secondly, maybe don't reveal that the first wild man we encounter bears the mark of Adar. From what we have seen, many of these wild men could well be the friends and families of the very Southlanders he is currently leading on a rescue mission. And he has just said,
nah, they're wild men, they're too far gone, they have the mark of Adar on them, so they're basically just psychopaths now.
But Arondir, my brother was captured and enslaved, maybe he escaped.
No, he's a wild man now, sorry.
Arondir tells Isildur not to blame himself because Theo has survived far worse.
What?
Far worse than... what? Far worse than getting attacked by something? Because that's all Isildur knows. Actually, I guess it is fair for Arondir to be like, well, whatever attacked him can't have been as bad as getting hit by a volcano, as Theo survived that, as did the rest of us. Oh my god, we might be invincible. Also, Isildur, you aren't feeling angry about getting Theo captured, are you? Because if you are, I have the perfect story about a time when I too was angry. If you ever need to learn not to be angry, just let me know. Anyway, he notices a torch, finds a severed arm, and we cut away shortly after, which means we can only infer that they all stopped looking for Theo after finding the dismembered corpse of a wild man, and returned to Pelargir to discuss what they should do the following morning.
I say we raid their camps.
Naturally, every village needs its idiot, and as Theo is currently unaccounted for, this dude steps up to the challenge. They found a single dead wild man who was killed in an unnatural manner, and this guy says, oh boy, how about we go kill some wild men because they suck. Dude, that guy we found was my Uncle Frank, stop being a prick. Isildur quite rightly says that the longer they take to make a decision, the longer Theo is out there, because Isildur has of course read the script and he knows that Theo is alive, which is also why Isildur has stopped searching for him twice at this point. He will be fine, because of course he will. Peasant number 7 says that they should go to Eastfield Glen because there are more wild men there, but Estrid says no, they should go north. She claims that she spent weeks searching for loved ones, and I'm sorry, fucking weeks? Didn't the volcano explode a couple of days ago? Or are we meant to infer that Isildur wandered around Mordor for weeks before being grabbed by the spiders? Or was Estrid already searching for her loved ones prior to the events of Season 1 for some reason? Which isn't exactly intuitive because of who her loved ones turn out to be. She continues that the northern part of the forest is old, and therefore there are wild men there, and worse.
That part of the forest is old. Promise you there are wild men there, and worse.
This logic appears to line up as much as I can expect from Rings of Power, which is to say that this is a totally illogical thing to conclude and obviously demands further interrogation. But woohoo, off we go, let's go north. It's probably worth asking at this point, why does everyone suddenly care about Theo? Yes, it sucks that a kid wandered off and didn't come back, but given what these people have gone through in the last couple of weeks or months, at this point I honestly have no idea, they have no doubt all lost people very close to them. Some of them were captured or killed by orcs, some of them died in battle, some were killed by the volcano, and some were branded by Adar and therefore became wild men. I'm not saying that they shouldn't want to rescue Theo, but some acknowledgement that they are endangering themselves because Theo and Isildur are fucking idiots would be nice. We do get one potential explanation for why they all dropped everything to rescue some kid at the end of the episode, and you're not ready for that. We'll get to that later. Isildur and Estrid fix the aqueduct, which I like because it makes sense that he would know how to do this. They start doing a romance, Estrid forgetting that she has a betrothed, implication being that she does not have a betrothed and that this was all a ruse to conceal the fact that she is not who she claims. Then Arondir shows up and his spider sense has informed him that she might be a wildman woman. Wild woman? Person of wild. Let's go with that. Arondir reveals that he noticed the wound on Estrid's neck, which makes sense as elves have exceptionally good eyesight whenever the writers remember that the elves have exceptionally good eyesight. Estrid, being retarded, tries to claim that she accidentally fell asleep next to the fire, and that this is how she received a wound to the back of her neck, trusting that neither Arondir nor Isildur would want to inspect the wound, forgetting that she has quite a lot of hair that would get in the way, and that therefore, under these circumstances, saying, "Whoops, I must have fallen asleep by the fire," is similar to saying, "Whoops, I tripped, fell, and landed backwards on a branding iron." Arondir sees through this facade and says that we all do foolish things sometimes, especially in moments of hopelessness, at which point Estrid realizes the jig is up and she tries to escape. This is very strange, because Arondir appears to acknowledge that Estrid did something foolish in a moment of hopelessness, and he is presumably referring to her kneeling before Adar so as to not get shanked by the Glugling's daycare teacher, which tells us two things. Arondir considers it foolish to kneel before Adar in order to live to fight another day, and he acknowledges that the people who chose to do so did this because it was a moment of hopelessness, thereby suggesting what I have been saying for quite a while now, that just because you bear the mark of Sauron or the mark of Adar, whatever we want to call it, this does not mean that you are evil. So then, Arondir and Isildur realize that Estrid is evil.
Estrid, what is this? Self-burn. Wildmen do it to hide the mark of Adar.
Arondir explains that the act of covering up the mark of Adar is something that the people of Wild are known to do, which, no, that is not what we've seen so far. But either way, my suggestion was that everyone thinks that if someone has been branded, then they are evil, whereas Arondir is now suggesting that if someone tries to hide their brand, then they are a person of Wild, which doesn't exactly clarify things. Additionally, if it is common practice for the people of Wild to cover up their brand with another brand, then they are just replacing one identifiable mark with another. He then continues,
We would have caught her at the gate had she not come in with you.
What?
I don't like Isildur. He is, as I have said many times, a clumsy, indecisive, irresponsible, and entitled rich kid who is carried along by the whims of the writers. But how exactly is it Isildur's fault that Arondir and the others did not check either Isildur or Estrid to see if they had been branded or had attempted to conceal their brand? But of course, we never actually saw Isildur and Estrid entering Pelargir. This took place off-screen.
Oh yeah, it's all coming together.
Which means that any and all speculation as to what actually happened is pointless. This is, after all, Rings of Power. The writers wanted this reveal to happen later in the story, which means they didn't get searched, even though they obviously would have got searched, and so the scene of them letting Isildur and Estrid in because they recognized Isildur remained on the editing room floor.
He's a wildman.
Dude, please, she's a person of Wild, keep up. Arondir believes that Estrid was planning to lead them into a trap to get captured by the other people of Wild, even though they are currently looking for Theo, whom Isildur believes to have been captured by the people of Wild. So either way, going to where the people of Wild currently are would indeed be your best and possibly only move. Okay, Arondir blames others when he forgets to do something. Understands why someone may kneel before Adar. Thinks people who knelt before Adar are inherently evil. And Estrid thinks she can outrun an elf, is shit at lying, and deliberately branded herself again so that she would look like a person of Wild. We then cut to deep in the forest, which means a couple of hours have passed at the very least, and Isildur waited until the camera started rolling to question what Estrid's plan was.
Stab me. Take my horse. Was that it?
He theorizes that she planned to escape to Numenor after she realized that he was a Numenorian, and he realizes that she does not have a betrothed. Her response is,
Would you rather I died in Mordor?
Yes, bitch.
Which, yeah, she doesn't deny it, which indicates that Isildur is pretty much right on the money. She knew that he was not an orc when she ambushed him. She did intend to kill him. She was lucky that he didn't kill her. Two problems with this, however. She decided not to kill him prior to realizing that he was a Numenorian, and if her intention was indeed to trick Isildur and get him to whisk her away to Numenor, then why would she invent a missing fiancé? When this is addressed later, I will return to it, but for now, it appears as though the writers made her invent that she was engaged so as to throw the audience off, despite the fact that this does not line up with her apparent goals. Also, backing up just one teeny tiny moment, where is everyone else? And where are they right now? Did they go to the northern part of the forest that Estrid previously described as likely being full of people of Wild? Is that why she is with them, to be an unwilling guide? If so, where are the rest of the villagers? We don't ever get an answer, and we just have to assume that Arondir and Isildur took Estrid into the woods alone for some reason. The reason, rather predictably, is because certain things are about to happen in this adorable little subplot that require that Isildur, Arondir, and Estrid are the only three people present. Anyway, Arondir finds a thingy and he realizes that Theo was not taken by men, but again, how he knows that Theo is alive is never addressed. Cut to Theo, who is alive. He has been captured and placed in a tree alongside the other people of Wild. Apart from the, 6 or 7 that were killed at the end of episode 3, plus the inhabitants of the other 3 camps that this guy says were attacked previously. This scene lasts for about 30 seconds, and so seems to exist purely to reassure the audience that yes, Theo is alive, so as to distract us from considering what Isildur and Arondir actually know to be true. But questioning what the characters in this goddamn show know to be true is an exercise in pain and futility, because what they know to be true changes as frequently as Galadriel rolls her R's. Yeah, there's a reason why I hadn't tried to roll my R's until now. Fuck you guys for telling me to do that. Anyway, Estrid nearly falls over and says if Arondir unshackled her, then she might be able to balance easier, but he refuses. Meanwhile, some fucking how, whilst off-screen, Isildur gets himself stuck in a swamp.
Oh, what a pickle.
How the fuck did you manage this, you clown? Did you get plonked in vertically? How? Anyway, both he and Arondir get pulled down by something. Estrid grabs a stick to try and save them, which for some reason reveals that there was a giant swamp snake living down there. Quite why it burst out and came to the surface because, oh my god, it's a stick! I have no idea. But luckily, the swamp snake really likes sticks because Arondir then cuts his way out and everything is okay, which, had he done whilst below the surface, would likely have resulted in him and Isildur drowning in the thick goopy bog. The purpose this scene serves is to give Arondir and Isildur a reason to trust Estrid, moments after giving them a reason not to trust Estrid. Because we gotta blast our way through the character drama as fast as humanly possible. Why a giant swamp snake was necessary to accomplish this, I have no idea, as it is introduced and then deleted within about 10 seconds, and I can only assume that they had money to burn and figured, well, a giant swamp snake is more thrilling than if they were just kinda sinking in the mud. And yes, it is more thrilling. But given that this creature is entirely inconsequential, this feels as though it was dragged in kicking and screaming from a VFX animator's hard drive because they needed some superficial thrills to make the audience look up from their phones and go, oh cool, before returning to watching cat videos on TikTok. Also, both Arondir and Isildur are absolutely fine after being swallowed by a creature with a mouth that looks like this. Additionally, they can't know that Estrid had anything to do with their rescue, because they were, of course, inside the snake. Whereas had they been slowly sinking and she somehow managed to rescue them, help bring fucking Beric, since he is evidently so important. Have her quickly tie a rope to Beric and rescue Arondir and Isildur that way. That would at least then make sense and the scene would accomplish what it needed to accomplish, because as it is, it just doesn't. But look, there's a giant snake monster.
Yay!
Anyway, then we get the single moment of levity from Arondir out of the entire series so far. He has, until this point, been characterized as a dour, joyless automaton, even when Bronwyn was alive, but he actually gets to smile in this scene.
There are nameless things in the deep places of this world. This one, We shall call supper.
Quite why he is cracking jokes about eating the thing that just ate him when they are trying to locate Theo, I have no idea, because even though Arondir implied that he knew what had taken Theo, he cannot know that Theo is actually alive. Okay, Isildur. Yeah, again, I was going to write down can't die and really fucking lucky, but we're good, we're good. Although we're gonna add gullible. Estrid, manipulative, was willing to kill Isildur. However, she is no longer willing to kill Isildur. Cut back to Saturday morning cartoon land. That's offensive to Saturday morning cartoons. Gundabale has spoken to the elders, and they have decided that Nori and Poppy are to be cast out at sunrise.
Sorry, but Stoors must come first.
This doesn't make sense. If they believe Nori and Poppy are friends with Rasputin, then why release them? And if they are going to release them, why wait until sunrise? Could it be that something is going to happen between now and sunrise that will allow them to convince their captors that they are not friends with Rasputin? Could it be that the writers made Gundabale do something that she would have no reason to do in order for the plot to... that's exactly what's about to happen. Nori says that if Sadok was in her place, he probably would have done the same thing. Which is partly true, but actually in this regard, Gundabale is at the very least more efficient in her idiocy than Sadok. Gundabale has decided to eject her enemies from her home, her very much static home, thereby risking her enemies informing Rasputin as to their location, and even if Rasputin is like, yeah, why do I care about a bunch of idiots living in a hole? If Nori and Poppy are indeed acolytes of the Sputin, then they could just be like, hey, she called you fat, go and shoot a fireball up her ass. Sadok, conversely, discovered that Nori had allowed Not Gandalf into their camp, and instead of ejecting Not Gandalf just kinda hung around off screen, so he didn't exist temporarily. And then Sadok punished Nori for her transgressions by kind of leaving her family behind, but not really, by putting them at the back of the caravan, knowing that Nori's dad had broken his ankle because Malva is a fat. Anyway, unbeknownst to Nori, she has just said the exact thing that would cause Gundabale to release them. Because Gundabale knows who Sadok is. Which means, upon being told that she was going to be banished in the morning, Nori's response is, yeah, I guess this other guy would have made the same decision, so I understand. And luckily her captor was like, why did you say that name? And then everything is okay. Which means Nori and Poppy accidentally bumped into the village idiot who accidentally led them to his village, and then, oh no, they got tied up because no one in this show is ever allowed to speak clearly or freely, and then this big misunderstanding is resolved with the second line of dialogue that is spoken after they are imprisoned. So, Gundabale shows Nori a cave painting and tells her that in ancient days there was a Stoor who wasn't like the rest of them. He dreamed one night of a place with endless streams of water and rolling hill. It was the Shire. He had a dream about the Shire. Essentially, the Shire exists because the writers made it appear to a Stoor in his dreams. Gundabale continues that he left Rune with a caravan of followers to find it, promising that when he did, he'd send someone back to gather the rest of them.
But that was the last any of us ever heard of Rory Mass Burrows.
This reveals that the Stoors and the Harfoots are two ever so slightly divergent cultures who were the same once upon a time, and Gundabale asks if Nori has returned to lead them to the promised paradise that would become known as the Shire. Given that she has evidently been waiting and hoping, foolishly or otherwise, that one or more halflings would return to their people and lead them to the promised land, why did she wait until now to make this connection when she clearly appeared to know what a Harfoot is?
Harfoots living in holes. It doesn't seem natural.
That's because we're not Harfoots.
And to be honest, even if she doesn't know what a Harfoot is, if she's just repeating what she heard Nori say, surely when two unknown mystery halflings show up on your doorstep, having clearly travelled here from the west, which Gundabale would know because she has been tracking them as she was aware that they were being hunted by all the devils in the desert, why wasn't she immediately like, hey, wait a minute, you guys are Harfoots? Did you find the Shire? And the reason this didn't happen is because the writers didn't want to reveal this until later. Anyway, Nori replies that Roromas Burrows never found the Shire, hence why the Harfoots just kinda started wandering. This is really fucking dumb, but I don't know what else I expected. This means that the Harfoots didn't quite go far enough west for some reason, and instead of continuing to search for the prophesized magical Happy Land, they forgot what they were doing and instead decided, hey, why don't we just kind of walk around for a bit? Nobody goes off trail, etc. Realizing that both she and Gundabale are distinctly shireless, Nori laments the fact that she doesn't have a home. Here, Nori is sad because the Harfoots don't have a home. They are destined to wander Middle-earth and settle in different places at different times. But in episode 1, Nori was very clearly missing her family, and she considered them to be her home, suggesting that it doesn't matter where you settle or if you settle, home is where you lay your head and home is where your loved ones are. These are very much mutually exclusive ideas, and neither are problematic in and of themselves, but if you try to tell me that the same character considers her family to be her home and she misses them, but also that she is very sad because she does not have a home, then I am going to ask whose balls you had to gargle to get this writing gig. But oh no, Skeletor and his Skelebobs have arrived. They backhand Gundabale after she forgets that they are literally double her size, and she tries to give them an obnoxious and antagonistic welcome.
To what do we owe the pleasure?
Why would you do that?
The Harfoots. Where are they?
I don't quite know how he knows that they are Harfoots. He should only know them as halflings, a more generic term for people of short. And this also indicates that Skelebob is indeed aware of the Stoors village, which is entirely incongruous given that the Stoors have no means of defending themselves, and they seemingly have reliable access to food and water, both of which are in very short supply in the desert, making me wonder why the big folk don't constantly demand resources from them. Additionally, it was heavily implied earlier that this was somehow a secret village, but we are supposed to just accept that this little hidden paradise not only exists, but it is very much not a secret, and I am sorry, I don't believe you. This would kind of be like if there were a roaming band of warg riders who had a camp in the Shire, and we were just expected to believe that they were kind of cool with there being hobbits living there with an abundance of food and other relative luxuries, such as shelter and bedding. Also, given that Skeletor knows about the Stoors, surely he would have assumed when he saw not Gandalf travelling with two halflings that these halflings are Stoors, which would mean he must have been here before and had this conversation, but evidently he didn't make this connection because the writers are idiots. Also, it is certainly lucky that Skeletor didn't show up 5 minutes earlier, as prior to Nori saying the exact thing that she needed to say to gain Gundabale's sympathy, she was more than willing to just chuck them back out into the desert, likely to their deaths, and so she presumably would have just told Skeletor, oh yeah, we've got them, here you go. However, now that she has learned that Nori is just like her, she refuses to cooperate and claims not to know what Skeletor is talking about. Skeletor says that if she does not hand over the Harfoots, he will go back to Rasputin and bring him here, at which point he will fuck them all up with spooky magic. Which, hold on, we only know like one thing about Skeletor. He's been tasked with finding the Harfoots so that way Rasputin will heal the curse upon his flesh. So recovering the Harfoots is Skeletor's job, which means surely he would just start lining up the Stoors and killing them until they reveal what they know. Instead, he seems to want to go back to Rasputin and tell him, yeah, the Harfoots are probably in this magical little paradise land filled with tiny people. We aren't certain, but probably. But wouldn't you just know it? They wouldn't cooperate, so can you, go over there and give them a little bit of encouragement? Rasputin's response would be, no, what the fuck? Get back out there and find them. I'm not going to heal the curse upon your flesh as a reward for me doing the thing that I asked you to do. But anyway, we of course cut away, and so we must wait until a later episode to find out what happens next. Gundabale, extremely loyal. Nori, exceptionally lucky. Skeletor wants Rasputin to do his job for him. Cut back to the company of Elrond. We see them mourning the loss of Red Shirt, a nice little detail that I wouldn't usually highlight, but in a show like Rings of Power, I really do need to point out when they get the absolute basics down. Galadriel walks up to Elrond and says that she knows he thinks the ring is deceiving her, but she believes it is guiding her, and that following it may be their only path to victory. The reason she is saying this is because she warned Elrond earlier that there was evil in them their hills, but Elrond didn't listen, and now Red Shirt is dead because Elrond did not trust the ring. It's all his fault, you see. This is exactly what Galadriel would be saying if she was Sauron in disguise. This is exactly what she would be saying if she was willingly or unwillingly working for Sauron, and this is exactly what she would be saying if she wanted to gain Elrond's trust and then lure him into a trap. The fact that, yes, she was apparently correct that there was something evil in the hills of Tir Gorthad only tells Elrond that the ring wants him to trust it, and it is using the useful idiot known to us as Galadriel to achieve its nefarious ends. Elrond asks if there is any point at which the cost of victory becomes too great, and Galadriel replies that she has not yet reached that point. I actually can't think what that point would be, which brings us to an interesting question. How far is too far, and how much is too much? Where is the line that Galadriel refuses to cross? So far, she got at least 7 elves killed during her centuries-long quest to murder Sauron, but this number is likely far higher. No wrongdoing is ever acknowledged, and Galadriel intended in Season 1 to ask for more soldiers to quench her thirst for vengeance. She accidentally led 500 Númenóreans to the Southlands under false pretenses, leading to approximately 2/3 of them being killed. She appeared to acknowledge that she is the reason why Miriel came to the Southlands, but she never acknowledges that she got hundreds of Númenóreans killed. She was manipulated by Sauron over a prolonged period of time. She acknowledges that this happened, but does not take any responsibility. And she repeatedly frames this as though it was his fault for deceiving her, rather than acknowledging that the only reason this was possible was because she was a perfect target due to her erratic, irresponsible, and self-assured behavior. She kept alive the very evil she sought to defeat. Again, she acknowledges that Sauron is indeed back as a result of her actions, but she still believes that her actions were justifiable in the moment, and that therefore she didn't actually do anything wrong. She concealed Sauron's identity from Elrond and Celebrimbor. She does acknowledge that she did this, but her justification is utter fucking nonsense, and this was an incredibly irresponsible thing to do. And finally, she allowed the elven rings to be crafted after knowing that Sauron had deceived her. Again, she does acknowledge that this is something that happened, but again, her justification,
because in my heart, I know the 3 rings are free of his influence,
is absurd and does not address the problem. Although the show has paid lip service to the idea that maybe she has learned from her mistakes, her actions so far in Season 2 indicate that she absolutely has not. Which means Galadriel being diplomatic with the truth, accidentally getting people killed, covering up her actions should she ever make a mistake, and accidentally doing exactly what Sauron wants her to do as a result of her singular devotion to annihilating him, is all very likely going to happen again. But I guess it is nice to know that she thinks she has a line that she will not cross, even if she is currently unsure what that line is. Elrond asks how she can be okay with not knowing her limits, and how this doesn't terrify her, and she responds,
because the suffering of a world ruled by Sauron terrifies me more.
Again, this reinforces that Galadriel has learned absolutely nothing, because she is willing to justify almost anything. She is willing to become almost anything to prevent Sauron from taking over Middle-earth, and she is saying this whilst aware that her actions have placed Celebrimbor in danger, and she is saying this whilst wearing a magical ring that she believes is a part of Sauron's evil plan. The entire reason why they are currently traveling to Eregion is to make sure Sauron hasn't corrupted or killed Celebrimbor, something that would not have happened had Galadriel not declined to tell him that Halbrand and Sauron are the same person. But unfortunately, the writers are not going to force Galadriel to come to terms with that. Elrond says that his father foresaw that one day Celebrimbor's life would be in his hands, and so he will choose the path that will give him the best hope of protecting Celebrimbor. This was set up in Season 1.
Do you know, I remember once he said to me, one day my future would be in his son's hands.
But at the same time has come out of fucking nowhere. This indicates that Elrond's priority is, seemingly, to make sure that Celebrimbor does not die, and that potentially this was a part of why he agreed to lead this company to Eregion. However, the stakes are a bit fucking bigger than Celebrimbor. Yes, he can make superweapons, but Galadriel is talking about Sauron taking over Middle-earth, whereas Elrond is talking about making sure that one guy doesn't die. This isn't necessarily a problem, I'm just clarifying that this is what Elrond values. Galadriel, for the moment, agrees with him.
Protecting that which is most fragile, most dear, is a task entrusted to all elves.
I think the writers believe this. I think the writers believe that Galadriel believes this. I do not, however, think that Galadriel believes this. We have an uncountable number of references, some of which I just went through. She very rarely shows any concern for anyone other than herself, and the idea of her going out of her way to protect someone is at this point laughable. Given what Galadriel did very recently, a few days ago in fact, this should further convince Elrond that Galadriel is under Sauron's influence. She then fingers her ring and sees a vision of the evil sharp crown, Elrond being held by orcs with a knife at his neck, the orcs sacking Eregion, Celebrimbor being squashed by rubble, and Halbrand standing there doing evil. This is another vague image of the future, but the fact that Sauron appears as Halbrand is notable, because it confirms that these visions are subjective. Sauron no longer looks like Halbrand. I mean, he's quite obviously the same guy, but for now just let me make the point. And so the fact that he appears in this vision as Halbrand and not Anatar or some other iteration indicates that this is not an actual vision of the future. Unless, I guess, Sauron decides to turn back into Halbrand for some reason, but I can't think why this would ever happen. If I am correct here, then this is confirmation that Sauron is luring Galadriel to Eregion via the visions from the ring, thereby confirming that Sauron does have power over these rings. I will return to this, however, when we have more information. Galadriel then asks Elrond to promise to prioritize opposing Sauron over all other considerations. My head feels like it's about to explode. I can't quite believe that the writers are this incompetent. What has just happened is that Galadriel said,
"Yeah, we gotta fight Sauron because the world will be really shit if he wins.
We have to make sure we save Celebrimbor. My father had a vision or something. Go watch season 1. It won't help, but just do it anyway.
As elves, it is our duty to protect that which is most fragile."
Implication being, she agrees that saving Celebrimbor is a priority, but then seconds later she says,
"Actually, fuck that, kill Sauron."
Which means this is a direct change of values that has happened mid-conversation. Yes, maybe this was brought about due to the vision from the ring. Maybe the vision caused Galadriel to suddenly change her mind in 5 seconds. If this were the case, however, Elrond would notice. Does Elrond notice? Does he fuck? Because the writers didn't notice. Galadriel specifies that she is asking Elrond to promise to prioritize fighting Sauron over anything else, including saving her, but the direct implications of what she is saying also includes prioritizing fighting Sauron over saving Celebrimbor. Elrond refuses to promise any such thing, because Galadriel is still wearing the ring, but he doesn't say, "Bitch, why are you flip-flopping and expecting me not to notice that you keep changing your mind? You can't say we gotta save those who need saving and then immediately afterwards make me promise to prioritize defeating Sauron over saving those who need saving. What is wrong with you? Take it off. Just give me your hand here and I'll take it off for you. Why are you still wearing it? Give it to fucking Map Guy. At least he didn't almost fuck Sauron and then quite possibly doom the free peoples of Middle-earth in an attempt to avoid being found out."
And after that, it gets even better.
Elrond then swears that defeating Sauron will come before anything else, even Galadriel's life.
By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, how to explain this? To use the exact words of the show, Elrond refused to promise to put opposing Sauron above all other considerations, even Galadriel's life. But he then swears that defeating Sauron will come first, even before her. The only possible explanation that I have for this is that Elrond will refuse to do things that he wants to do if someone who is wearing one of the Rings of Power asks him to do it. So like essentially, if Galadriel had said, "Hey Elrond, can you go and pick up the milk from the shop?" he would have said, "No, I will not. However, I of my own volition will go and pick up the milk from the shop." That is honestly all I've got. That's the only way that I can make sense of this. Because otherwise he basically says, "No, I'm not going to do that, but also yes, I will, provided I get to say it." Overall, this scene is one of the worst so far in Rings of Power, because Galadriel keeps changing her mind about what she wants to do and is thereby acting in a highly suspicious manner. Elrond doesn't notice, and he promises to do what Galadriel said after refusing to promise to do what Galadriel said. This is a combination of something being needlessly confusing, because the writers are useless, and something being utterly nonsensical and contradictory, because the characters are not allowed to act like people. Anyway, cliffhanger time. Map Guy says that they heard drums, and we cut away. Fuck you, give us more viewing hours to find out what the drums were. Okay, Galadriel changes her mind in seconds, and Elrond wants to save Celebrimbor as a priority and refuses to trust anything anyone wearing the ring says. Cut back to the woodland outside of Pelargir. Arondir has decided to let Isildur decide whether or not to unshackle Estrid.
Is that the key to the manacles?
believe he meant for you to decide whether or not to use it.
He obviously does, as even though she is a murderous and manipulative lying bitch who planned to use him for her own ends, the writers did make there be a giant snake monster, and they did make Isildur and Arondir both get eaten, and they did make Estrid save them, so she can't really be that bad. Then Estrid says something that Galadriel has yet to say at any point in Rings of Power.
I'm sorry.
I haven't yet made my mind up about Estrid, but this tiny moment gives her a leg up when compared to Galadriel. And yes, Galadriel did apologize to Halbrand for manipulating him, but this was in an effort to manipulate him further, so this does not count. Anyway, Isildur is an idiot, so naturally he accepts the apology and forgets that this woman tried to kill him yesterday, which rather predictably leads to...
Forgiveness doesn't come to folk like me.
Women are devious and destructive.
Oh, okay, so just when I thought something interesting was going to happen, she demonstrates that she and Isildur were meant for each other. She takes Isildur's sword whilst Arondir is very close by, armed with incredible hearing, a facial expression that looks like the default setting on an RPG character creator, and a bow that he can be quite handy with, all of which she will know, and yet she mysteriously does not expect Arondir to intervene. Thankfully, and I genuinely mean this, they almost pulled this off. The writers actually remembered that Arondir exists, even though he's off screen, because he realizes what has happened and he readies his bow because obviously he would do that, which means the writers had Arondir behave accordingly despite the fact that the camera was not pointing at him. This is good. I mean, it's kind of the baseline for good, but it's still good. However, they forgot to have Estrid be aware of the fact that, even though Arondir is not standing 3 feet from her, this does not mean that he ceases to exist, and so her behavior indicates that she has the memory of a housefly. However, it does appear that Isildur is about to face some meaningful consequences for letting his willy take the wheel, as either he or Estrid, or both, are about to be killed or injured. Then an Ent walks up and kills Estrid. Ents are, of course, infamous for being able to move around quietly, and yes, Arondir does notice about 2 seconds before the Ent slaps Estrid with the force of an 18-wheeler, but this is hardly what I would call an acute sense of hearing. Of course, the reason no one noticed is because you were doing so well. The Ent was off-screen. Anything can happen in this show at any point. Who knows what terrors are lurking just off camera, waiting for their cue to walk up and pummel these pitiful excuses for characters into the dirt. So, Estrid has just suffered the consequences of her actions. She was unwilling to trust anyone, not the people from Pelargir and not Isildur, and she was so convinced that they would never accept her because, as we all know, if you try and cover up Adar's brand, then you are a person of Wild and you can never be accepted by civilized society. Additionally, Isildur has been punished for being too naive. He thought he could hook up with a local person of Wild and convince her to sit on his splat cannon, and as a result, he allowed her to take his sword, which resulted in an Ent rolling up and being like, "No swords, swords bad." On that point, actually, why did Estrid need Isildur's sword? Yes, her intention seems to be to run off, and therefore she would probably need a weapon, but this requires that she believed Arondir would let her run off with Isildur's sword. Anyway, the Ent is about to squash Isildur next to Estrid's corpse, but Arondir speaks to it in Sindarin and convinces it that it can't just go around killing people. The Ent asks him, "Hast thou ever touched axe to wooded life?" And you may remember that way back in episode 3 of season 1, Arondir did indeed chop down a tree, because it was either that or die. He admits that he has chopped down a tree, although he did not want to, and as a result, he is attacked for all of about 5 seconds before the Ents, I guess, forget what he just said. The Ents remain suspicious of Isildur's sword, and he explains that the sword is not for felling trees, but for felling orcs. Estrid, meanwhile, lies dead behind him, her spine shattered and her insides liquefied from being backhanded by a goddamn tree. But Isildur he's kind of over it. He's remembered his mission, Theos before hoes. The Ent explains that there was an army of orcs and that they maimed and murdered as they marched. These Ents were called by the other trees, presumably the ones that were destroyed in the Southlands, but they arrived too late. One of the Ents, an Entwife, believes that the elves, men, and orcs are all the same, but Arondir convinces her that they are not. He asks her for forgiveness, she replies that forgiveness takes an age, and then she gives him a flower, at which point he promises to clear the orcs out and leave the Ents in peace. The Ents lead them to Theo, which means that what I had assumed to be the orcs accompanied by Damrod was actually the Ents. This also means that the Ents threw an axe, because that is absolutely something Ents do, and they decided to capture 3 or 4 people because... why? Seriously, the Ents are absolutely willing to kill people. Estrid is totally fine, by the way. She's not actually dead. But this Ent was just about to squash her and Isildur to finish the job. Plus, they appear to be experts at throwing axes with incredible precision. So, for what possible reason would they keep Theo alive? I ask, and then remember that I am talking about Rings of Power, and so the reason is that it doesn't matter why. What matters is that it facilitated a subplot in an episode of a TV show that was all tied up nicely by the end. Look how cathartic it is for Theo to realize that Arondir is not willing to give up on him. That couldn't have happened if the Ents had done exactly what they would have done. And so, stop thinking about it. This is a recurring problem with this goddamn fucking show, that if you put more thought into watching it than was put into making it, then you immediately run into problems, because it becomes clear that Rings of Power is not a story. It is a sequence of events that were designed to elicit an emotional response. And these events appear to have been written backwards, starting with the payoff, and with no consideration given to ensuring that these events adhere to cause and effect. Anyway, Theo thanks Arondir for rescuing him. Arondir says that he must follow the trail of destruction left by the orcs, as he promised the Ents that he would ensure that they are left in peace. He invites Theo to come with him because, naturally, if you are heading into enemy territory, a 14-year-old idiot is the obvious choice of companion. Speaking of, Arondir's mission appears to make an amount of sense, but this could have been set up far better. Perhaps by having him react in shock at seeing the deforestation caused by the orcs, and then having him tell the Ents that he will do what he can to protect the beauty of the forest, which could be further drawn from the fact that he is, or was, a grower. What we got instead was that he didn't seem to notice or care about the destroyed trees, but then he told the Ents that he would make sure they are left in peace in an effort to make sure they didn't kill him and Isildur. Theo replies that he has promises of his own to keep, although what these are I am not sure, and then Arondir says,
"And my Glenn, Lord of Pelargir."
So this is quite the revelation. Let's hit it from both sides. It is possible that Arondir is saying goodbye to Theo, and is giving him some encouragement. See you later, champ, you got this, kind of thing. But given that Arondir does not ever appear to talk in this manner, given that Lord is an actual title and not some frivolity that you dish out to make a kid feel better, and given that we are halfway through Season 2 and we have yet to be introduced to any of the great kings of men that will go on to receive Rings of Power of their own, my honest guess is that Arondir is being entirely literal. Theo is the Lord of Pelargir. Why is Theo the Lord of Pelargir? Well, if you recall, Bronwyn, the medic from the village of Tirharad, decided that she was in charge of everyone, and they were all just kind of like, oh, yeah, okay. And then Bronwyn came down with a bad case of the actress having better things to do, which means that Theo is now in charge of everyone. That's all I've got. There is no other explanation that I can give by drawing from information presented to us in Rings of Power. If Theo is indeed the Lord of Pelargir, then this has come about for no reason other than that he is Bronwyn's son. This also reminds me, all of these peasants, including Theo and Arondir, should be of the belief that Halbrand is the long-awaited king of the Southlands, but none of them have mentioned him once. They don't know if they survived his trip to Eregion, if he is coming back, nothing. Also, it turns out that not only did Estrid not lie about having a fiancé, but he is also one of the people of Wild that was captured for some reason by the Ents, which means he has returned to cockblock Isildur right when he was about to show her that the sea is always right. This means that Estrid started getting sticky for a guy that she met yesterday, whilst believing that her fiancé was still out there trying to find her. But again, I guess they're both evil, so I'm not supposed to care, maybe? I don't really know anymore. Theo is Lord because plot. Arondir really likes trees. Estrid is an idiot, forgets things immediately, is indestructible. Didn't lie about her fiancé, moved on extremely quickly. Cut back to the hills of Tiryn Gorthad, where we see that a load of orcs have marched across the continent and are now very close to the company of Elrond. This reveals that what Adar was preparing to do in the previous episode was to march his army into Elven lands.
But why?
Sauron hasn't returned to speak to Adar, so Adar should know nothing more than he knew in episode 1. But maybe this will be revealed later. That said, if Sauron sent any kind of message to Adar, then this throws the timeline even more out of whack. For now, I will accept that Adar has a reason for being here, but I will come back to this when that reason is revealed. The elves speculate as to whether Sauron and Adar are working together, as they are aware that Adar commands armies of orcs, and it is entirely reasonable for them to suspect this. Although why this was not proposed at the military meeting in episode 2, I have no idea. Elrond says that they need to inform the High King that an army of orcs has just shown up before the elven armies depart for Mordor via sea as proposed by Galadriel in episode 2. But before they can decide what to do, the orcs start shooting arrows at their horses, hoping to grab some dinner, and Map Guy gets shot by accident. No one heard the orcs coming, because if they had heard them, then the writers wouldn't have been able to slide in this nice little moral conundrum for their protagonists. This puts Galadriel and Elrond in the exact situation that they debated earlier. Do they risk their lives to save Map Guy? Do they leave him or kill him for the greater good, so as to have a better chance at defeating Sauron? Just as a refresher, Galadriel's perspective is that they should place opposing Sauron above all other considerations, whereas Elrond's perspective is that they need to put defeating Sauron first.
It makes sense, don't be a bitch.
Luckily, however, the characters manage to avoid having that discussion because the ring fixes Map Guy's injury.
What a twist!
Galadriel then gives the ring to Elrond for safekeeping, and she hurls herself at the enemy to prove how heroic she is. Wait, so these rings can just undo an injury such as this? Can we please place bets on how long it will take for the writers to forget that they established this? I'm going with 3 episodes. I think by episode 7, something will have happened that could have been fixed with this ring, and it will not be. Also, I have to highlight this because it genuinely surprised me. Galadriel took the fucking ring off. She actually did it. I mean, her reason for doing it is about to be revealed, but, baby steps. Anyway, as Galadriel fights off a horde of orcs single-handedly, Map Guy, McDagaman, and What Are They realize that Galadriel has sacrificed herself to save them, but Elrond realizes that Galadriel has sacrificed herself to save the ring. None of them are at all emotional at losing her, despite apparently believing this to be a sacrifice. Additionally, this seemingly selfless and noble act, plus the fact that the ring just healed Map Guy, should prove 3 things to Elrond. Galadriel is probably not being controlled by Sauron. The ring has just convinced Galadriel that she must lay down her life in order to protect it, and the ring desperately wants Elrond to trust it. Elrond should therefore be more convinced than ever that these rings cannot be trusted, and time will tell how he will respond to this. Now, regarding Galadriel's epic fight scene, at tremendous risk of stating the blindingly fucking obvious, this sequence is absurd. Imagine the really silly upside-down decapitation from season 1. This scene is that, but it keeps going and going and going.
I heed the voice of Elune.
What is that? Why are you here? How many goddamn costumes do you have? And how are you not understanding that this is Rings of Power, not Harry Potter, not Warhammer, not Legend of Zelda, and not fucking Warcraft?
I'm retarded.
Yeah, I guess I shouldn't have asked. Do you have something to say, or are you just here to piss me off?
Oh yeah, random, you just don't like this because you hate women.
Is that the best you can do? We're still going with that line? Thank you for that insight, retarded alter ego. But because we unfortunately both occupy the same mortal form, you should know that I have a memory, and I am very familiar with The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, and Rings of Power. The obvious parallel we can draw is Legolas, who does some pretty insane shit in The Lord of the Rings, and he does even more insane shit in The Hobbit. The 3 moments that come to mind are when he climbs the crumbling tower as it falls, when he mows through a load of orcs whilst balancing on the dwarves in their barrels, and when he hangs upside down from a Gundabat and kills 50 or so orcs with his knives. These moments are utter garbage, but in every instance, they are reliant entirely upon Legolas's skill. The problem is that his skill is dialed up to the fucking moon, which makes it appear as though he is a weightless magic man who is 1 step away from being a literal god being. Conversely, this sequence in Rings of Power is not reliant upon Galadriel's skill. It is reliant upon her opponents being retarded. She is in a flat, open area. Yes, there are of course trees, but she does not use these trees as any form of cover. She does not dash in and out of the darkness, picking the orcs off one by one, spreading terror and causing the orcs to ultimately flee without ever knowing what hit them. She instead dances around in a very well-lit area and mows through her brainless opponents as they run towards her one by one, some of whom are armed with bows, and one of whom is so skilled with his bow that he accidentally hit Map Guy without even realizing. She daggers 3 of them, arrows 1, fire arrows 2, kicks 1, arrows another, hits 3 with a chain before exploding a lantern and killing 3 more. She then sits there on her horse, quite literally surrounded by orcs, and says,
"Go back to the shadow."
Oh. It's the thing I heard before. I like it when I hear the thing I heard. It makes me feel like I'm watching The Lord of the Rings. I'm so happy to be back in Middle-earth. This is so clever. And just before she can make her heroic escape, Adar lassoes her off her horse and... cliffhanger. Episode 4 of Season 2 of Rings of Power is a special kind of bad. It is bad in a way that almost defies description. I put more effort into my average poo than the writers appear to have put into this show. But let's try to summarize, starting with the Pelargir plot. The writers needed to resolve the cliffhanger ending of episode 3 by having the characters rescue Theo. This falls at the first hurdle because there is no reason why Theo should be alive, and yet not only is he alive, but the characters also inexplicably seem to know that he is alive. They also clearly wanted to develop Isildur's relationship with Estrid, which required that Arondir, Isildur, and Estrid inexplicably head into the forest alone, because if they were accompanied by 15 to 20 peasants, then none of the designated emotional beats would have been possible. The encounter with the swamp snake could not have gone as required, because the odds of it specifically eating Arondir and Isildur would have been insane had they been travelling as a group. The encounter with the Ents could not have gone as dictated by the overlords of Amazon's Middle-earth, because had there been a horde of twitchy peasants, then Arondir would not have been able to defuse the situation. And finally, Estrid's reunion with her fiancé could not have happened, because this would have revealed to the peasants that they are both people of Wild and are therefore evil, and they would have been either banished or worse. Additionally, Estrid's narrative in this episode is that she believes she will never be accepted by civilized society, only for Isildur to believe in her and convince her that he won't let them cast her out. This also would not have been possible had many peasants been present, because they would have cast her out as soon as they learned of her true identity. This plotline then ends with Arondir going on an adventure, but not before revealing that Theo is the Lord of Pelargir, which is not explained at all, and my guess is that this will become very important later in the story. The rune plot needed to explain how Nori and Poppy survived, and it didn't do this at all. There is no explanation, other than that the impact itself was not shown. The writers then decided to develop some kind of conflict between Skeletor and the Stoors, and the way in which Nori gets involved is ridiculous and relies entirely upon characters being idiots and being in exactly the right place at the right time. Meanwhile, not Gandalf began this episode looking for his friends, but no time for that now. Look, it's Tom Bombadil. He's going to give you your mission, and we get a cliffhanger before not Gandalf can choose to accept it. Both of these rune plot lines feel like an abject waste of time, but until we know where they lead, I can't exactly say if there was any merit to them. And finally, the Galadriel plot needed to launch her on the next step of her journey, and get her heading towards Eregion to rescue Celebrimbor and confront Sauron, only to be separated and captured by Adar. How much of this relies upon luck is unclear until we know the details of Adar and Halbrand's plan, because if Adar somehow knew that Galadriel was going to be there, then this part at least kind of lines up. The stuff with the bridge and the Barrow-wights remains just as nonsensical, as does all of Galadriel's conversations with Elrond regarding the ring. The writers also clearly wanted Galadriel to unshackle herself from her bonds that were quite rightly placed upon her, and for her to selflessly sacrifice herself for the greater good. But again, the circumstances under which this comes about, as well as the manner in which this fight scene takes place, are simply laughable. Overall, this is the worst episode in Season 2 so far. The 2 main hooks from Episode 3 are not present in this episode at all. Numenor, Eregion, and the dwarves are totally absent, which is a consequence of the insane decision to multiply the various stories, thereby reducing the focus the show can give to any one of them. For most of Season 1, we had the Southlands plot involving the peasants and the orcs, the Elves plot involving Elrond and Celebrimbor's quest to build a forge, which was interwoven with the Khazad-dûm plot, which involved Durin, Disa, and the king. And we also had the stuff in Numenor, and Galadriel and Sauron, who connected the aforementioned plotlines into something that seemed to be understandable, even though, of course, none of it lined up timeline-wise. Oh, and of course, we had the Harfoot's plot, which was totally unrelated to any of the above. That is a total of 5 plot lines, plus Galadriel's own story, which is laid over the top of 4 of them. Conversely, by the midway point in Season 2, we have the Elves plot dealing with the rings and Galadriel's decision at the end of Season 1. We have the Adar plot involving his pending conflict with Sauron and/or Eregion. We have the Nori and Poppy plot involving their conflict with Skeletor. The Not Gandalf plot where he learns magic. The Arendir plot where he is hunting orcs, the Theo plot where he is the Lord of Pelargir for some fucking reason, the Dwarves plot where they try to fix their mountain, the Numenor plot where Pharazôn takes over. I've probably forgotten at least one, but already that is 8 plot lines that are distinctly lacking in any kind of narrative through line, which was one purpose of Galadriel's personal story in Season 1. In Season 2, she is directly connected to the events in Lindon, and I assume Eregion, although not yet, and she has just been captured by Adar, which then ties her into that plot as well. The rune stuff is only connected to the rest of the story because Not Gandalf has been told that his destiny is to defeat Sauron. The Arendir plot will presumably lead him to Eregion, but I could of course be wrong. The Harfoot's plot, the Theo plot, and the Numenor plot seem totally superfluous, and so every time we get one of those trademark dramatic cutaways halfway through a conversation, it is a coin toss as to whether the audience is going to see Galadriel and Elrond discussing the effects of the ring and how they are going to rescue Celebrimbor, or if we are going to see Nori and Poppy doing member berries with desert hobbits. IGN somehow gave this season a 6 out of 10, down from the 8 out of 10 they gave Season 1, which means IGN considers Season 2 of Rings of Power to be better than Alien Isolation, and with that, I'm going to end the video for the sake of my own sanity. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, a whole load of new subs have joined the channel thanks to this series, so I want to say thank you and I hope that you are enjoying the videos. People have asked me a few times about the music I use in these videos, and all of it is on my second channel. The link is in the description, along with the community Discord server, so feel free to hop in and talk about whatever takes your fancy. With that, I'm out of here. I will see you soon for part 5.